We have authors here. Senator Yee, SB 41. We have 15 items to hear today. One item, item number 10, SB 531. Senator Rubio is on consent.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and Senators. This bill is pretty straightforward. There have been a number of counties in the state of California that has been running a pilot program whereby we are able, individuals are able to get clean needles without a prescription. As you can imagine, this pilot program has been rather successful. It has literally have saved lives. And what this bill proposes to do is to now expand this particular program statewide so that not only some counties but all counties, individuals within those counties can in fact have a much better future. And so I want to just report that in the Senate committee we did agree to take a number of amendments with Senator Anderson, and in that that we would in fact evaluate the results of this particular bill, a 3-year sunset, and then to clarify safe disposal of syringe by syringe exchange program. With that, urgent I vote.
Thank you very much. We do have a quorum present. So, Madam Clerk, would you read the roll, please?
Hancock?
Here.
Hancock here. Anderson? Calderon?
Here.
Calderon here. Harmon?
Here.
Harmon here. Liu?
Here.
Liu here. Price?
Here.
Price here. Steinberg?
Okay. Thank you very much. And are you offering the amendments requested by Senator Anderson today, or?
Well, we've been working with him on these amendments, and these are amendments that we are now taking.
Okay, thank you. Without objection, the amendments are accepted. Are there speakers in support?
Good morning. My name is Glenn Backus for Drug Policy Alliance. Pitch hitting for a PhD who worked on the study but wasn't able to attend today. Briefly, I would just like to say that this policy that's before you is endorsed by the Federal Centers for Disease Control and all major public health bodies in the U.S. and internationally. Allowing pharmacists to decide whether to dispense syringes or not is good public health policy, but as this is a public safety committee, I will briefly address public safety concerns. In every state that this has been done, New York 10 years ago, Wisconsin 20 years ago, every other U.S. state this has been evaluated, and the evaluations consistently find what we found in California. No increase in unsafe discard of syringes, no impacts on crime or drug use. There are no negative sides to allowing this good public health policy to go forward. And seeing as we are based on a wealth of research, I would ask for your aye vote.
Missy Johnson on behalf of the California Retailers Association. Our chain drug members operate in California as well as the other states that already permit pharmacists to sell a specified number of syringes, and our experiences in those other states do not bear witness to some of the opposition claims that it results in increased crime and an increased number of improperly discarded Sharps products either in stores or on our grounds. It's important to note that while as retailers we like to be able to sell a number of items to our consumers, we also bear a certain responsibility to ensure the safety of our employees and our consumers, and we would not be supporting a policy that in any way, shape, or form subjected them to increased risks of inadvertent needle pricks or other types of crime, whether it be loitering or others that have been brought up in the past that folks have tried to associate with this type of program. We think this is a very good public policy. It helps stem the spread of bloodborne diseases, and as Senator Yee mentioned, there are certain amendments in the bill that provide for the safe collection and disposal of used syringes, whether it be by legitimate medical use or by IV drug use. And therefore, we support this bill. We've seen no ill effects in the other states where we operate, and we ask for your support. Thank you.
Kathy Mossberg, representing the San Francisco AIDS Foundation, a co-sponsor of the bill. In strong support, urge your aye vote.
Trent Smith on behalf of Rite Aid Pharmacies in support.
Michael Radigan on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, Santa Clara County, here in support. Nicole Wortelman on behalf of the Alameda County Board of Supervisors and City and County of San Francisco in support.
Kelly Green on behalf of the California Nurses Association in support.
Stephanie Zay with Planned Parenthood Affiliates of California, also in support.
Kristen Hare, California Academy of Family Physicians, also in support.
Peter Callison for Walgreens in support.
Helene Meshar on behalf of the California Association of Alcohol and Drug Program Executives in support.
Laura Thomas, San Francisco Hepatitis C Task Force in strong support.
Carol Strickman on behalf of Legal Services for Prisoners with Children in support.
Megan Selby on behalf of California Coalition for Women Prisoners in support.
Others in support? Are there speakers in opposition? Please come forward.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is John Lovell, and I'm speaking on behalf of the California Police Chiefs and the California Narcotic Officers Association. In California, the way needle distribution programs have been handled, either needle exchange programs or pharmaceutical distribution programs, has been by requiring as a condition precedent an action by the Board of Supervisors or the City Council to approve the distribution in that jurisdiction. And there are very good public policy reasons for that. First of all, it's good public health policy. The public health data with respect to needle distribution programs shows that they can succeed, but what's necessary is a collaborative model for that success, where law enforcement, public health, and the community are working together. Because in addition to public health issues, there are also serious public safety and quality of life issues. So that a city council will have a say, or a board of supervisors, in which pharmacies will be distributing. Because what you don't want is to create a situation where you have pharmacies distributing needles in an area where it becomes a magnet for quality of life problems. And notwithstanding the testimony of my friend Glenn Bacchus, and he is my friend, there is a very disturbing study out of Connecticut which illustrates the problems when needle programs are simply imposed upon a region by the state. And those problems include problems with improper distribution. It includes also drug dealers hanging out at certain locations because that's where the customer base is, and it includes actual dumping of used needles in the shelves of stores. This was all documented in the Connecticut study. We think that the unintended consequence of this bill will be that you will have a concentration of needle distribution in underserved and at-risk areas. We think there's nothing wrong with the current proposal. In fact, we think it works well, that mandates collaboration by requiring the Board of Supervisors and or a City Council to give approval. We think that's much better than having a distant corporate entity determine, well, we're going to distribute needles free in all, or we're going to distribute needles in all of these areas. We respectfully request a no vote on this bill. Thank you.
Marty Veronica on behalf of the California District Attorneys Association. We are also opposed to this measure primarily for the reasons that Mr. Lovell indicated. I think current law has worked well, where communities have been able to impose appropriate controls over the sale and distribution of these needles. This measure would remove that local option. I think that those communities that are supportive of this measure are already working out under the current guidelines, needle exchange programs. I don't think that these programs should be forced on communities that are not in favor of this measure. And this measure statewide would take away that local option and would impose a different manner. For those reasons, we are opposed to this measure and would urge a no vote. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. Danielle Higgs on behalf of the California State Sheriff's Association and the Chief Probation Officers of California. We are opposed to this bill for the reasons previously stated. We believe that the local discretion gives appropriate controls to the Board of Supervisors or City Council to determine the appropriate level of sale and distribution of needles among the pharmacies in their jurisdiction. And for those reasons, we ask for a no vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there others in opposition? Seeing and hearing none, are there questions or comments from the committee? Senator Harmon.
Question for Senator Yee. You heard the opposition testimony, Senator, advocating for local input by County Board of Supervisors and City Councils. Why not? That seems like a very reasonable request, local control, or not even control, but certainly input. And talk about unintended consequences. I mean, I can certainly visualize what Mr. Lovell was talking about. I mean, in at-risk communities, this is going to be like a magnet. It would be a terrible effect on local communities. So why not, Senator? Why not allow the locals to put their oar in the water?
I think the question that you are posing is a very good one. I think that what we hope to accomplish here in the state legislature is that we look at data and not kind of be fanciful in terms of what if and maybe this and maybe that. And so that's the reason why within the pilot program that we have had for a number of years now, there has been, in fact, data that suggests that any of the kinds of worries that the sky is going to fall by my worthy opponents are just absolutely not true. There are counties upon counties in the state of California that have had the cooperation of everyone, as Mr. Lovell talked about, and pilot these kinds of programs. All of those studies have not indicated one iota of evidence that the kinds of things that my opponents have said are absolutely true at all. Now, there may be some studies in another state, but in the state of California, with all the pilot programs that we've not had these kinds of problems that have been talked about. But one thing is very, very clear, is that these kinds of pilot programs have saved lives. And that's ultimately what we ought to be thinking about.
Follow-up question. The very pilot programs that you're talking about, did those pilot programs have input from local elected officials? Yes, they did, didn't they?
Absolutely. And so what we're now saying is that given the fact that a research study has indicated that this, in fact, is a good program and it works, now we're going one step further. And we're saying, not all the counties in the state of California are involved in these kinds of pilot programs. There are barriers. There are some individuals who are not too happy about, maybe giving those kinds of wide distributions of needles. And in some communities, I understand that and I get that. But ultimately, we're trying to save lives. And if there are some barriers in trying to kind of help save lives, we ought to kind of remove those barriers. And this bill does, in fact, remove that barrier. But again, in this particular bill, based on the recommendation of Senator Anderson, we have a research component to that. And we're going to monitor that. And I don't think that we're interested in ensuring that this program fails. I don't think that we want to do harm to any individual, any community whatsoever. So there is a evaluation component to that. And just as the pilot program, we had a evaluation component. This one, we have an evaluation component. And hopefully the evaluation will then indicate whether or not this works or not. The reality is that we've got people dying in the state of California because of this needle use. Now, I would rather that they don't use needles, but that's not the case. The case is that people are using needles. And the question is how we're going to help them, how we're going to save their lives, and how we're going to reduce their costs and their cost to our society. I think that this is a good bill that's going to allow us to do that.
Are there other questions? Senator Price, Senator Liu.
No question, just a comment. I certainly applaud the author and sponsors. Needle and syringe distribution certainly is, no longer stigmatized. I think that this is a progressive way to advance a legitimate public health effort, and so I think you're on the right track. I think we need to expand and to encourage more greater use of these kinds of programs where they want to be used. So you said they're not going to be acceptable in every area, but in those areas that do accept it, I think we should provide the greatest kind of flexibility so that the resource can be utilized. And so I support the bill, prepared to move it, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'll recognize the motion after the author is closed. Senator Liu.
Just a couple of clarifications. On page 9 of the
Yes, I will.
analysis, you were talking about accepting the amendments that you and Senator Anderson worked out. Are those the amendments that we're talking about?
On page 9 of the analysis?
That is correct.
Yes.
Okay, those are
For an evaluation of the bill, not paid for by the state, a 3-year sunset, and
Disposal.
requiring participating pharmacies to provide for safe disposal.
And just another clarification, we're moving from 10 hypodermic needles to 30. Is that, what's the time period in that? Is it daily or weekly? Daily.
The pharmacist is only allowed to, or physician is only allowed to dispense 30 to a patient, and an individual is only allowed to possess 30.
On a daily basis.
Well, the pharmacist or physician may do a daily or during a meeting, but the person may only have 30. And if they have more than that, then they're in violation of the law.
And so what prohibits this person from going from one drug company, to a drugstore to another drugstore?
They would be in violation of the state paraphernalia laws if they possessed more than 30 from any source.
Is there electronic information relationship between? They'd be in violation, I understand that, but, okay.
No, Senator, there isn't electronic tracking. The bill is designed to replicate what's been done in other states and to make sure that we don't put so many cost barriers that it makes it impossible to implement.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other comments? In that case, I'll recognize Senator Price's motion, which is due pass as amended to appropriations. The chair will be voting aye on this bill. I thank you, Senator Anderson. I think that the amendments that were taken will allow us to study this and look at it. There is concern about in any way encouraging the abuse of drugs. There's also a concern with recognizing reality and saving people's lives. So I think the bill as amended will lead us forward and set us in a good direction. Would you like to close, Senator?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. In my close, let me comment on the amendments. There is still ongoing discussion between my office and Senator Anderson's office about the 3-year. There is still some discussion, concern as to whether or not the 3-year really is sufficient time to do an adequate and robust and reliable evaluation. As you can imagine, you want as many data points so that you can determine how consistent your results are. But the agreement was, in fact, 3 years. We are sticking to that. But, if there is a possibility of extending it, we would like to extend that. And I think that's going to be based on Senator Anderson's discussion with Senator Anderson. I think the other is that with the amendment, it does have some unintended consequences. There are other programs whereby the programs are going to extend beyond the 3 years, and we don't want to somehow truncate those programs. And so there's still some further work that we're going to be looking at with this particular bill, but I just at least want to apprise you of that.
And I appreciate that. It generally takes at least a year to gear up a program. It takes at least a year to study the program. It takes time to write the report and disseminate it, and then you have to pass a bill a year in advance if it's going to take effect. So hopefully you guys can work out a time frame that is practical, because what we're looking for, I think, is a serious study that gives us data that we need to keep communities safe and save lives.
If I can just add, I mean, it took 5 years to do the evaluation on the pilot, and this is going to be a statewide, so you can imagine the dimension of that evaluation, and I'm sure that my opponents are really going to be looking at how adequate the data is, and we really want to get good, robust data so that we can both honestly approach this issue based on data and not just simply, what conjectures we may have.
Right.
So,
well,
thank you.
And make adjustments as needed so that we get a program that reaches the intended results of saving lives and maintaining safe communities. Thank you. So the motion is do pass as amended to appropriations. Secretary, please open the roll.
Hancock.
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Anderson.
Aye.
Anderson, aye. Calderon. Harmon. Lou.
Aye.
Lou, aye. Price.
Aye.
Price, aye. Steinberg.
That bill is okay. That bill is on call.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and Senators. Thank you.
Senator Renner is here with
Item 2, SB 54, Senator Runner.
He's got 3 funny ones.
Welcome to the committee.
Members, you turned it on for me. Thank you. Jessica's Law, as you know, was approved by voters back in 2006, and it prohibits any person who is required to register as a sex offender from residing within 2,000 feet from any public or private school or park where children regularly gather. Last year, this California Supreme Court upheld the 2,000-foot restriction. While the 2,000-foot restriction is constitutional, the justices ruled that questions regarding the availability of compliant housing are best addressed at the county level. This bill would remedy that issue. It seeks to simplify compliance by providing that the 2,000 feet shall be measured by the shortest practical pedestrian or vehicle path. Right now it could be as the crow flies, and there might be a river or something in between. So this would simplify that. And the bill would also set up a clear judicial review process by allowing a person who is subject to the residency restriction to petition the Superior Court of the County of Residence for relief from the requirement, providing that original jurisdiction for the petition would lie within the 3-judge appellate division of the Superior Court in which the petition is filed, providing that the petitioner establish that there is a persuasive lack of compliant housing in the county so that a substantial number of sex offenders are unable to find compliant housing, providing that the relief will be narrowly crafted in order to substantially comply with the intent of the voters in approving the residency requirements. SB 54 recognizes that Jessica's Law 2,000-foot residency requirement, while constitutional, may create some unique compliance problems in some counties, specifically San Francisco. Past efforts to allow city council members or county supervisors to actually ease the local residency restriction have not gained any traction in the legislature. This bill would place this responsibility before a 3-judge panel, less susceptible to political pressure. The objective of this bill is not to eliminate the voter-approved sex offender residency requirements, but to make compliance much easier and grant limited relief when necessary. SB 54 does require 2/3 vote, provides an opportunity to improve current law, and I'd ask for your aye vote. And Crime Victims United is in support as well as LA County District Attorney's Office. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there speakers in support?
Yes, Jim Provenza, Los Angeles District Attorney's Office. We support the policy of this bill, which is to provide a method to grant exceptions to the 2,000-foot rule so that housing situations can be dealt with appropriately.
Others in support? Are there speakers in opposition? Please come forward.
Yes, I'm Carol Strickman, staff attorney with Legal Services for Prisoners with Children, and we did write a letter about this. I think that essentially this doesn't go far enough to provide relief. I think that it's not clear to me how an appellate division of the Superior Court, which is normally not authorized to take evidence, would be an evidentiary court. There's a very high burden of evidence for the individual, and they have to not only prove that their own situation is impossible, but the majority of the people in the county can't find relief, and that I think it should go further than that. It shouldn't be just directed to help San Francisco, but other people in other counties, and also it would require a lot of evidence. You can't just describe your individual situation. You have to describe everybody's situation. It becomes almost like a class action lawsuit, which has to be brought by each individual person. So we thought it should. We appreciate the thrust of it, which is to provide relief, but we really felt it didn't go far enough to provide relief, and then in some ways it could be limiting relief that a county might be willing to do. So, thank you.
Thank you. Are there comments or questions from members of the committee?
I'll let Mr. Provenza answer that question.
Thank you. I understand that was also the intent. It might take some additional language to allow an amicus brief or argument in these cases so that others could intervene in the case. And as I picture it, say if it were to happen in LA County and the district attorney agreed that there was a problem, we might very well go in and agree with the petition, as we have in some other cases.
Thank you. I have to say that I do have questions about the timeliness of this in light of the Supreme Court review of the entire residency requirement and the findings, frankly, of the California Sex Offender Management Board that believe that there needs to be a complete overhaul of the residency requirement because it is, in fact, leading to transient living on the part of released sex offenders, which is not good for the community and not good for anybody. And it does seem to me that the standard for judicial relief is way too high for, frankly, a transient released prisoner of any kind to prove, number one, that there is an inadequate supply of affordable, compliant housing, and prove, number two, that there's a substantial percentage of sex offenders who cannot find a place to stay. How would, that is a class action lawsuit. It requires considerable resources. So, I appreciate the intent of the author, too. I think that really we don't want to muddy the waters now when this is under consideration by the California Supreme Court, and would suggest that we see what the court rules. As you know, they're looking also at whether or not this is an additional punishment imposed, in which case it will be unconstitutional in any form, or whether it simply needs to be made workable in some way. So,
well, in response to some of that, the Supreme Court has upheld it as constitutional in the state of Iowa, and that's why the 2,000 feet was based there. I would be willing to accept amicus filings as part of that, And the sex offender board in itself says over 80% currently of the sex offenders are compliant with this 2,000 feet. So we're not talking about a lot of people, and I believe it's probably a little closer or even a little more. So, I think it's a step in the right direction that we need to at least make sure that 2,000 feet makes sense as far as walking past schools and parks and living walking distance there within 2,000 feet, but not necessarily across the river, would be helpful. So I would continue to ask for your support for this bill.
Thank you. Is there a motion on the bill? I would suggest we make this a two-year bill, Senator Runner, and see where the dust settles on the Supreme Court resolution.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Rubio, SB 240.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Good morning. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you for having me this morning to present SB 240. Madam Chair and members, back in my great home of Bakersfield, California, prior to having the honor of serving in the Senate, we, myself and a number of parents, wrestled with a school where we went through the proper chains of command. We went to the superintendent of school. We went to school board members to get a simple fix on the school grounds to only have the door shut in our face, literally. Couldn't get calls back from school board members or the superintendent. And so in working with parents that had children attending this particular school, they brought up the issue of, why can't we pull our kids out? And I said, well, if we pull the kids out for more than 3 days, then it becomes a crime. And so that planted the seed for me, from a policy perspective, on the question as it relates to if you pull your child out, should it be a crime? Understanding that the current law, the truancy law, is very important to deal with those irresponsible parents, but does it penalize responsible parents who would like to see a change within their current school site? And so therefore we introduced SB 240, which empowers parents to choose and mobilize and speak on behalf of their children. SB 240 would remove the threat of prosecution for parents who acted collectively, a majority of parents from a single classroom, grade level, or school site, by signing a petition and presenting it to the school administration in order to improve school safety, education quality, or the social-emotional climate of their child's school. I believe, Madam Chair, that the question before this committee this morning is a simple one. Should collective action by parents be a crime? SB 240 would simply provide a vehicle to empower parents to advocate for a quality of education and a safe environment for their children. And here with me today is one of those proud parents, Bernice Bonilla, who took action herself. And with that, Madam Chair, I'd respectfully ask for your aye vote and turn to Ms. Bonilla if I could.
Welcome to the committee.
Good morning. My name is Bernice Bonillas, and I'm retired from Southern California Gas Company. I worked there 40 years, and I was also the regional officer for the employees of the gas company, so I'm a little bit familiar with grievance procedures and work action rules and so forth. So when I read the existing bill, the 1317, and I saw that the parents really didn't have any grievance procedure of any kind without possibly, like Senator Rubio says, committing a crime. And we had an incident in Bakersfield a few months back where a school counselor that was able to communicate with these parents that came in, many of them didn't speak English, many of them were very low income, and so as they walked into the offices, they were treated with no respect at all, and to the point where some of them maybe drove up in old cars and things like that. And the secretary of the principal in this particular instance actually called the Bakersfield Police Department, and they came. And of course, being low income, many of them did not have insurance on. So anyway, their cars were towed away because of action from the school, and their kids watching this, and so. Children had problems. The school counselor worked with them, and was able to take care of the children, and then talk to many of the parents. And so, of course, the administration, the principal, didn't like that. So they actually, the counselor went into the office and asked them to please treat the parents with more respect. And they made a false accusation that the counselor actually pushed the secretary. So they called the police again. The counselor was arrested. She was booked, and of course, immediately she got a good attorney in town who. The DA dropped all charges immediately because it was uncalled for. But that's the way they were treating even the counselor, because she was able to work with these parents. So the parents were very upset over this incident. So they wanted meetings. So we met with them once a week. We had translators so that we actually trained them how to speak at a board meeting, and in fact, how to work in elections to get a school board member elected who would be, listen to them, because currently they had no one. And so we were able to do all that. And let me see what else I have here.
Right, so at some point, people didn't go to school, right?
Right, right. So anyway, they got about over 500 signatures on those petitions. These parents who were supposed to be uneducated and all that. And like I said, we got a couple of new school board members. But when we went to the school board meeting to take the parents, I'm talking about the school board people, locked the doors and they let all their people come in through the back door and take all the chairs, the seats in the auditorium, and the parents had to stand. There was standing room only. There was so many that attended. I mean, that actually happened. I was one of those people that was locked out. I said, what? But anyway, they did. And the speakers, when they actually came to the podium to speak, they needed translators because they only spoke Spanish in this case. And the time that they give them, like 2 minutes or whatever, they included the translation time, so they actually didn't have time for anything. I mean, it was like unbelievable. And after all this, we found out there was other schools in Bakersfield, like Mount Vernon and Casa Loma. They wanted to know if they could join our group to be able to do something with the problems at their school. Same thing, very low income type. So, yes, we do have a problem. So I support this bill, hoping that something can be done for the parents have some kind of a grievance procedure without actually becoming a criminal. And they did ask us, like Michael said, if they should keep their children out of school to protest what was going on. And, of course, we told them no, because this law, and, the ADA, we explained to them how it would take money out of the schools that is for their benefit. So yeah, they did what we said, and it was successful to a point. But I know that most school districts now have issued their layoff notices March 15th. And funny that all 7 counselors are going to be they've gotten their notices. Maybe that was a way to get rid of this good counselor. I don't know.
Well, thank you very much for clarifying the incident. I have to say, in reading the bill, I was wondering, what was the precipitating incident here?
John Lovell with the California Police Chiefs Association. We're in support of this bill. This is good sense. Collective action by parents to improve the status of their public schools is not criminal activity. And frankly, we have enough to do than worry about this. And if SB 41 becomes law, we'll have a lot more to do.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Lovell. Yeah.
I'm Brendan Tartaglia with Disability Rights California. We have a support if amended position on the bill. We think it's a good bill, but we'd like to see some a similar provision inserted into the bill to allow for the collective action of special education parents as well, since they would never constitute a majority of a class otherwise.
Thank you. Again, I'm not sure if that's needed, but the motion on this bill would be do pass back to the Rules Committee, because I understand the Education Committee wants to look at it from an education perspective as opposed to the public safety perspective we're looking at it from today. Are there other speakers in support? Are there speakers in opposition to the bill? Seeing and hearing none, are there any comments or questions from members of the committee? Senator Price.
Yeah, just curious, what kinds of infractions would qualify for the exemption? How do you draw the line in terms of the kinds of issues, subject matter that could be covered by the exemption?
Senator Price, that's a great question, and I would say anything that would warrant collective action of a majority of parents. So this isn't going to suggest that if a teacher does something that's minor or the school does something that's not a serious grievance, that a majority of parents would collectively come together and sign a petition. And I'm more than willing to discuss with this committee if you're comfortable with that threshold, but I would say anything that warrants a majority of parents coming together, collectively signing a petition, and then taking action.
It would be just like any union grievance. I mean, we don't take all grievances. We take legitimate grievances, right?
Of course. All right. Are there any other comments or questions? I mean, I think actually Mr. Lovell summed it up quite well in that there is a difference between civil disobedience or collective action and criminal activity in a public safety issue to direct our very scarce and precious resources in public safety. As I said, the motion would be do pass to Rules Committee, and I think there are a lot of education-related questions about time, place, and manner, which we can discuss there. But the chair is very supportive of this bill as removing from criminal activity a specific kind of action.
I'll move the bill to Rules.
Thank you.
Motion is due pass to the Rules Committee. Secretary, would you open the roll?
Hancock.
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Anderson.
Aye.
Anderson, aye. Calderon. Harmon. Blue.
Aye.
Blue, aye. Price. Steinberg.
That bill is on call. Bill is on call, Senator Rubio.
Thank you.
Now we have number 9, also by Senator Rubio, SB 484.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. SB 484 would increase the transparency of prison health contracts by allowing the Legislative Analyst's Office and members of the California State Legislature to inspect a health care contract or amendment to a contract. Currently, only the state auditor and members of JLAC have the authority to review these contracts prior to becoming public 3 years after the contract has been in place. As all of you do know, prison health care costs are currently skyrocketing. LAO's office has found that dramatic increases in spending on adult prison health care from $1.2 billion in 2005-06 to 2008-09. Last year alone, California spent an average of $16,000 per inmate on health care services. The LAO directly attributes the growth of health care costs greater usage of contract medical services. And Madam Chair, this bill simply would provide access to these contracts for members of the legislature, because I think when the chair, the honorable and fine chair of our Subcommittee 5 budget, doesn't have access to this information, it is important that they should, along with other members of the legislature, and that's what this bill attempts to accomplish, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Are there speakers in support of the bill?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and members. Matt Gray on behalf of Taxpayers for Improving Public Safety in support. We can't imagine a situation where it would be inappropriate for the lawmakers to have this insight into what's going on. It's right now exclusively an executive function, the people look to the legislature first and foremost as to why things are not working, and I think it's appropriate entirely, as does TIPS, that you have a say-so, as discreet as it is through this legislation, in what's going on. And we think it's entirely appropriate, and so we ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there others in support?
Yes, Carol Strickman, Legal Services for Prisoners with Children, and we're in support.
Thank you. Are there speakers in opposition to the bill?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members. My name is Dan Chick. I'm Government Affairs Director for HealthNet. We are the subject of this contract that I think the Senator would like to have greater disclosure of. I'd like to give you a little background about our contract. We were brought in, we competed on an RFP and won the bid to try to bend the cost curve for healthcare services outside the prison walls. And what we're doing under the contract is, in essence, repricing contracts using our existing network. We have about 2.2 million lives currently in Medi-Cal and commercial and healthy families. This law, which this bill seeks to amend, is patterned off of contract protections that have served the state very well for Medi-Cal and healthy families. What we're concerned about with this bill is, if in the fact, when we enter into a contract, like currently right now, our contract is protected for a period of 1 year. During that time, the rates cannot be made public. They are kept confidential, and there's a very good reason for that. If our competitors, as well as the provider groups, hospitals, and medical services people we want to contract, were aware of our rates, it would severely hamper our ability to get the savings that the state wants us to get. This is true for Medi-Cal. It's true for healthy families. These laws have been on the books for quite a long time. This is essentially our contract right here. We are completely comfortable with disclosing the contract except for the 10 pages of rate sheets. That's the kind of information that you wouldn't want generally out there in the community. I mean, given electronic technology, those rates could be everywhere. So our ability to get the savings we need to would be severely hampered if everybody had access to those rate targets. So this concerns us greatly moving forward. It's not really a risk-bearing contract for us. We're merely getting the advantage of target rates, and then we price them lower than that. We turn around and reprice those claims, and the state gets the savings. We're afraid that if, it's kind of a strange argument to make, but if 120 members of the legislature and their staff have complete unredacted access to this contract from its inception, or any other contract that corrections or the receiver enters into, they may not be aware of this 1 year limitation that you can't make this information public. And then after 3 years, of course, the whole contract is public. But during that interim time, it would be really detrimental to the state and its desire to achieve savings if everybody had it. Now, currently, it's available under state law. It's permissible that JLAC and the state auditor have an unredacted copy of the contract, and they have had so since its inception. The Senator is a member of that committee. If in an event there was any concern with the contract, we would welcome review from the committee. My experience with JLAC over the years is that they're very good about keeping confidences. We just worry about expanded access in that scenario, and for that reason we would oppose the bill. Any questions?
Thank you. Are there others in opposition? Seeing and hearing none, are there questions from members of the committee? Senator Rubio, I would like you to respond to the issues that were raised by HealthNet, and also your feelings about whether the current receivership has resulted in the kinds of actions that you're seeking to obtain through this bill.
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity to respond. First, the rates that the representative from HealthNet suggested would somehow not be confidential anymore. That's simply not true. Anyone who gets access to this information would still have to abide by the confidentiality laws as they exist today. As a member of JLAC, as someone who has tried to see this contract, I can tell you that when you do get access, they make it very clear that it is confidential and that it should not be given to anybody, so that the savings that is purported to be made on behalf of taxpayers of California isn't put in jeopardy. Let's talk about the savings for a second, though, and who is served well. the gentleman from HealthNet also said that the prior contracts have served us well. Well, prices as it pertains to medical costs in our prison system have been skyrocketing. I don't think they have served us well. And when the chair of our budget committee, the chair of our sub-5 committee, and members of that committee they're prohibited from looking at these contracts to confirm that we are in fact reaping savings on behalf of the taxpayers of California, I think something is broken and something's wrong. This bill simply tries to amend and fix that. And so it's a very simple effort to bring more information to the people who are balancing and putting together our budget. And so my staff's worked with the receivership. He's not taken a support or opposition position on this bill, Madam Chair. Believes that more input is good in ensuring that we're getting the best deal for the taxpayers.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Senator Anderson.
If this was I get we may want more savings, but if this was an open RFP and other people bidded on it, and we took the best bid, while we may not like what we received, that we think we should get more, perhaps that's the best that the market can offer. Otherwise, people would be offering better deals, right?
No, because it also takes into account utilization. And so we have to ensure that utilization, one, is occurring with respect from a management perspective. This contract also includes that. So it doesn't also just deal with rates. The big issue is utilization. And so we have to be able to manage and track, measure, and monitor the success of these contracts. And that's where I think for those who are responsible in the legislature to balance the budget, make sure that we are being prudent on behalf of taxpayers, it is wise to have access to this information. You do it at local government. When we oversaw at the county level rates that we set forth within Medi-Cal for providers for hospitals, it was ludicrous to think that those contracts would not be made available to those who are responsible for the budget. And there's a disconnect within the legislature that this bill simply tries to fix.
Thank you.
Well, the motion on this bill would be due pass to appropriations, where presumably more of the fiscal impact on the state will be taken into account. I am concerned about the nuances of how we bargain for the best price with our providers. But frankly, the current system in which the healthcare costs have about doubled in the last 5 years leads me to think we're not doing very well, and that we should perhaps err on the side of more accountability in this case. So I would support a motion to do pass to appropriations.
So moved.
Thank you. Senator Price moves. Madam Secretary, please open the roll.
Hancock?
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Anderson?
No.
Anderson, no. Calderon? Harmon? Lou? Price?
Aye.
Price, aye. Steinberg?
That bill is on call. Thank you. Next. Yeah. B260. Senator Cannella, this is SB 260.
Correct. Madam Chair, good morning, members. SB 260 is a measure that attempts to help law enforcement deal with the continuing problem of methamphetamine production in our state. As we all know, controlling excessive possession of the most common precursors to meth, ephedrine and pseudoephedrine, continues to be a major problem despite efforts at both the state and the federal level over the last decade. SB 260 targets persons in possession of significant amounts of ephedrine or pseudoephedrine by making it a felony for an individual to possess 1/2 pound or more of these substances. To put this amount in perspective, a 1/2 pound of ephedrine is enough Sudafed to tackle a small community's hay fever for an entire allergy season. And as an allergy sufferer, I can tell you that's a lot of medicine. Despite the fact that both ephedrine and pseudoephedrine are only sold behind the counter, meth manufacturers have developed ways to get around reporting laws. The most common practice is called smurfing, in which makers of meth pay people to purchase packages of ephedrine or pseudoephedrine as they move from store to store. As a result, law enforcement agents have to go from store to store just to track how much of a drug an individual has purchased. It's even harder to prove intent to manufacture meth. But the fact of the matter is that there is no reason the person would have a 1/2 pound of ephedrine or pseudoephedrine except to manufacture meth. This amount is too large to serve any individual medical purpose. Possession of a 1/2 pound or more of these substances is excessive and unnecessary. Given the lengths an individual must go to secure this amount or more, the mere fact that they have so much makes it clear there is an ulterior motive behind the substance intended uses. For this reason, a strict liability felony for possessing large amounts of either ephedrine or pseudoephedrine would help law enforcement fight meth manufacturers. Speaking as a representative from the Central Valley, once known as the meth capital of California and the United States, there's a serious need to look at current meth enforcement. To say the drug is simply dangerous only makes light of the situation we face. The future of our state is at risk unless we take action to penalize individuals that produce more meth by purchasing significant amounts of these drugs.
Thank you. I would note that this bill is ROCA, and I know you understand what that means, Senator, but we do allow people to present their bills.
Yes.
And are there speakers in support? Seeing and hearing none, are there speakers in opposition?
I will only take a moment to register Drug Policy Alliance's opposition to the bill and any bill that would exacerbate our budget and overcrowding crisis in a time that we have no budget for drug treatment. Thank you.
Yes. Carol Strickman for Legal Services for Prisoners with Children, and we also oppose this. Possession of 1/2 pound would already have these penalties if you could prove that the person possessed with intent to manufacture or intent to sell for manufacture, a lesser offense. So it's not like you couldn't prosecute and convict and get these sentences under current law. Thank you.
Megan Selby, California Coalition for Women Prisoners, opposed.
Thank you. Are there other speakers in opposition? Seeing and hearing none, are there questions or comments from members of the committee? In that case, this bill is ROCA.
I have a question. If the witness that spoke earlier said that it can be prosecuted right now with intent, then would that really impact ROCA? I mean, if we're already prosecuting, all of this would do is lower the cost of prosecution because you wouldn't have to prove that. Can somebody speak to that?
Well, I think what Senator Cannella's bill addresses is cases where there is no proof beyond a reasonable doubt to show that the person intended to manufacture methamphetamine. They didn't have it with laboratory equipment. They didn't have any money that showed they made transactions in pseudoephedrine. So it would be just strictly somebody had a 1/2 pound and you couldn't tie it to any particular manufacturing or sales activity.
It would be shown as intent that you have that much material.
But in order to get a 1/2 pound, I mean, you can't go to one store and get it. Do you have any idea how many stores you have to go to get a 1/2 pound?
you know what, I could do the math, but it'd be
It's a lot of stores.
And they could also be hauling the material for the various manufacturers as well. So it's not only purchasing, but all the folks that are buying it, lumping it together, and transporting it to the place where they're going to make meth. So,
thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, and I will say, and although, if I may, just closing comment, I understand the concerns of the folks that spoke, but I can tell you again from a resident of the Central Valley, this is a major problem. And it's unfortunate that we haven't managed our prisons well over the last several years, but it doesn't give us an excuse to let people commit crimes, because that's what they do to further this habit. So this is a problem. At some point, we're going to have to deal with it, because it is destroying our state. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we will have some other bills related to this problem on this and other calendars. All right, Senator Vargas.
Yeah.
Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. Do I need to push that button? I guess I do. Thank you again, Madam Chair and Senators. Thank you for allowing me to present SB 291. This bill would provide that after a fugitive has been brought back to this state by extradition proceedings, the person shall be committed to the county jail with the bail set in the amount of $100,000 in addition to the amount of bail appearing on the warrant. In addition, SB 291 would require that a notice bail hearing take place prior to deviating from the proposed bail amount of $100,000. Under existing law, criminal defendants extradited back to California may bail out prior to appearing before a judge. Sometimes these defendants become fugitives a second time, leaving California for refuge in another state. Upon capture, these defendants are extradited back to California at considerable expense to the taxpayers. SB 291 will discourage this practice of jumping bail and will save taxpayers dollars by dramatically reducing the number of times our counties pay thousands of dollars to chase down and extradite fugitives in other states. This bill will also provide district attorneys the opportunity to provide the magistrate with additional information that should be considered before deviating from the proposed bail amount. This time, Madam Chair, I would like to introduce Gail Stewart and Sylvia Tenario from the San Diego County District Attorney's Office to speak on the bill.
Thank you.
If I may.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Excuse me, is that on?
Yes.
Good morning, Chairwoman Hancock and members of the Public Safety Group. I'm a Deputy District Attorney in San Diego County and have been so for the past 11 years. In my current position of handling extraditions for my office, I've been in that position for 5 years, and I handle all domestic and international extraditions. I'm also the chair of the California District Attorneys Association Extradition Committee. And previous to that, I worked at the United States Department of Justice, Office of International Affairs, handling extraditions. Basically, Senate Bill 291 serves as an insurance policy which will guarantee that defendants who have been fled the state and have been extradited back to California at considerable taxpayer expense will be prevented from fleeing again. As the Senator has noted, sometimes these defendants flee for a second time, and we are forced to seek extradition for a second time. Other times, these defendants remain at large within our communities. The process of extraditing someone back to California, as I indicated, comes to considerable expense, anywhere from $2,000 to $6,000, depending on where the fugitive is found. At some point, the cost of extradition is then sought to be reimbursed from the state of California through the governor's office. So ultimately, it does fall on the state of California to pay for the cost of returning someone to the state. I don't need to tell the committee that this is an unnecessary and undue financial burden on an already financially strapped state and county. And considering the current financial crisis and all the cuts that public safety groups are experiencing, we do not want criminals to continue to squander scarce taxpayer dollars. And basically, SB 291 would give us a remedy to address this wasteful situation. As was indicated earlier, this would basically require a $100,000 supplemental bail to the existing amount of the original bail, which we believe is a reasonable insurance to make sure that the defendant stays in California to face the charges. In my experience in San Diego, and due to a lot of the budget cuts throughout the state, we're seeing that a lot of prosecutorial agencies are only seeking extradition on very serious cases or probation violations. We do not have the luxury of extraditing everybody. So we're focusing on people that have committed serious and violent felonies, not misdemeanors. Again, the 48-hour notice bail hearing would give the opportunity to the defendant and counsel to seek a reduction in that amount. But importantly, it would give us, the prosecution, an opportunity to address issues of bail and to allow the judge, in this case, to make a more informed decision. We want to provide the judge information about the flight of the defendant, which oftentimes has not been considered when issuing that arrest warrant. We also want to provide information about the underlying case, as well as any information about what the criminal has been up to since he or she has fled the state. In short, it's a uniform, simplified, and more expedient process to ensure that defendants that are extradited back stay in custody long enough to face their criminal charges. And this bill also addresses public safety concerns. In a lot of our serious and violent felonies, there are sensitive victims. Oftentimes, we want to make sure that the defendants are not back in the community to potentially further victimize these victims. It's not an arbitrary and an irrelevant bail supplement. I think in most decisions, when the judge is considering the amount of bail to set, they don't know that the defendant has fled the state. So they're making a decision about bail when signing that warrant without knowing that the defendant has fled. And I believe that this bill is narrowly tailored to address only a small class of criminal defendants, those that have a propensity to flee. So in that respect, it's our position that it's not arbitrary or irrelevant. And it's also consistent with all our statutory scheme in California, because it's giving the defendant a 48-hour hearing where his or her counsel can address the issue of bail. And the magistrate or the judge's ability to make a decision on bail is basically left untouched. The bill does not impinge on the judge's ability to do so. So with that, we would ask the committee for a yes vote, respectfully.
Thank you.
Marty Varadkar on behalf of the California District Attorneys Association. We are in strong support of this measure. Thank you.
Jim Provenza, Los Angeles District Attorney's Office. We support the measure. We have many cases that we have to take through the extradition process. It's a very labor-intensive and cost-intensive process. Once we get them back, we think it's important to take every necessary measure to assure that they don't flee again. A higher bail, which really is for the 48-hour period, and beyond if the court decides, but the court can adjust after that hearing that they get within 48 hours. So we think it's a very reasonable approach to making sure that they don't leave again and that we don't go through that expense a second time.
Thank you. Are there others in support? Are there speakers in opposition to the bill? Seeing and hearing none, are there questions or comments from the committee? Senator Harman.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I had a question for either one or both of the representatives from the District Attorney's Office from San Diego and from Los Angeles. I am supportive of the bill, but I'm concerned about a constitutional challenge that might be following the enactment of this proposed bill. Would you, either one of you, please comment a little additionally? I heard the lady district attorney from San Diego, I'm sorry I forgot your name, thank you, say that it is not arbitrary and irrelevant, which I think are the constitutional language. Can you expand on that a little bit? Why is it when you arbitrarily say it's going to be $100,000 and the judge has to set that amount, as I understand the bill? That sounds arbitrary to me, and I'm concerned that it might be challenged. Give me your thoughts on that, please.
Yes, thank you. I think it would be arbitrary if there wasn't a basis in fact to increase the bail. Here, the salient basis in fact is the fact that this person has fled the state and has absented himself from coming to court to answer up on the charges. So in that respect, I think that's the fact that prompts the increase in the bail. $100,000 in the state of California is really not that much. 10% of that would be $10,000. Even with our slumping property values, it's not very difficult to put property up and just have to post $10,000 and to get out. So that would be my response, but I'll defer to the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office as well.
Thank you.
And we think that, agree with that, and also the fact that it does come to a hearing within 48 hours, and then the judge can review the particulars of that case to determine if that $100,000 is appropriate in that particular case.
And so do I understand both of you to believe then that if there is in fact a constitutional challenge to this law, that it would survive that type of a challenge in court?
I believe so.
I believe so as well. As you may or may not know, there are currently several enhancements under California law for other things such as weapon use, great bodily injury, and in a lot of ways this is similar to those enhancements.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There are other comments or questions? Okay, the bill has been moved. It does not have amendments, and it does not go to appropriations. Okay. The bill has been moved. The chair will be voting aye as well. Madam Secretary, would you open the roll, please?
Yes. Hancock.
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Anderson.
Aye.
Anderson, aye. Calderon.
Aye.
Calderon, aye. Harmon.
Aye.
Harmon, aye. Liu. Price. Steinberg.
That bill is on call for the other members.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senators. Thank you. Thank you.
Senator De Leon has two bills before the committee today. SB 427, item 8, and SB 798, item 13. Both relating, oddly enough, to his favorite topic.
Madam Chair, which bill number would you like to bring up first?
If you don't have a preference, why don't we do number 8?
427?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair Hancock, Mr. Vice Chair Anderson, as well as members. Thank you for the opportunity to present AB 427. I do want to start off by addressing the concerns of the Public Safety Committee of the Senate with regards to the blanket firearm ban for gang injunction members, and propose the author amendments as stated in your analysis that reads specifically, quote, in every case in which a court orders an injunction pursuant to a Civil Code section 3479 to abate a nuisance related to gang activity, the court shall state on the record whether any or all defendants shall be enjoined from possessing a firearm as a term of the injunction, end quote. In short, I want to make sure that a judge has the right to have the determination to make sure if that person in question under the gang injunction should or not possess a firearm, and should have that right. So I want to be respectful of this committee and you, Madam Chair, by accepting that amendment as author amendment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members, thank you for the opportunity to present Measure SB 427. We need to protect our children and have them to be able to feel safe in our streets, free from armed gang members. This added protection will assist law enforcement and disarm gang members and dangerous individuals in our communities, keeping firearms out of the wrong hands. SB 427 also provides consumer privacy protection for ammunition purchases and provides technical cleanup to AB 962, a measure that you all remember that was signed into law in 2009. The cleanup language reflects the data that can be recorded electronically and creates privacy protection for this information. Lastly, I want to conclude that the bill clarifies language dealing with internet purchases and remote ordering of handgun ammunition. Madam Chair, I know you've been supportive of a measure similar in terms of AB 962. This measure in itself is largely technical in nature. Therefore, I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. Are there speakers in support?
My name is Amanda Wilcox, and I'm here on behalf of the California chapters of the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence. We were co-sponsors of AB 962 2 years ago, and as already stated by the Senator, this bill clarifies the original intent of that bill and addresses concerns that the opposition raised. Specifically, it clarifies that internet or mail order sales can take place, and clarifies that who could view the ammunition logs, as well as proper disposal of them in order to protect the privacy of the ammunition purchasers. I just want to point out that it has been shown by local jurisdictions, specifically the City of Sacramento has in place ammunition sales logs that are transmitted in Sacramento by local ordinance to the Sacramento Police Department, and the results, it's been in place long enough for there to be considerable data on the effectiveness of this, and the results are astounding in how these logs have given law enforcement a tool to identify prohibited persons with both ammunition and firearms, and it is a way to get a handle on the illegal gun market. So urge your support and hope that this new bill resolves any issues with the bill so that it can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Ben Van Houten on behalf of Legal Community Against Violence. We were also a co-sponsor of 962, and we are in strong support of this. As both speakers have said already, this is a common sense cleanup bill to improve the use and effectiveness of handgun ammunition sales records. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and members. I'm Bill Mulder. I'm a sergeant with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, appearing on behalf of Sheriff Lee Baca, and we're in strong support of this bill. It's a very good bill to clean up what last year's bill, and we urge your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there others in support? Are there speakers in opposition to the bill? You're the witness table.
How you doing? Madam Chair and members, Sam Paredes representing Gun Owners of California. We are in strong opposition to this bill. It's kind of like AB 962 Redux, and we continue to have the same kinds of issues with this bill. It is unnecessary. It is unworkable. The court found that provisions of the law that was passed and signed were unconstitutional under California law. We believe that if this law, the way it is written now, goes through again, another court case will find it to be unconstitutional on other provisions. And we haven't even begun to exhaust the state issues regarding this bill, much less the federal issues that will come up. Secondly, I want to point out that the need for this bill and the companion bill that the Senator offered to redefine handgun ammunition were brought on with a scare tactic that frankly was kind of offensive to those of us in the community who were painted with the brush that somehow we wanted to come back and re-legalize ammunition that is already banned in California, armor piercing in particular, and is banned under federal law. And the reason I bring this up, even though this is not a part of this bill, it is a companion to the bill, and it was an issue that we took great umbrance with. Secondly, the fact that the examples that were used to justify the need for this law, including a police officer who was shot in a vest with ammunition, and the next day they found that the police officer had actually shot himself and was now brought up under charges. So the rationale and some of the examples for the need for this legislation was just frankly not. We are in strong opposition to this bill. We feel that it is continually unconstitutional and infringes on the rights of law-abiding citizens who should not be treated like registered sex offenders every time they buy a box of handgun ammunition, giving all their personal information and their thumbprints. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Gerald Upholt representing the California Association of Firearms Retailers. And I'm going to give you the perspective of retailers to the key issues that were raised in the analysis, if I may. Relative to the injunctions against the gangs, we don't have a problem with that. Nobody can support gang members. Relative to the remote purchase that would be channeled through a dealer, that's a useless thing in our view, because dealers aren't going to do that, because as soon as they do that, they're losing their own sales. And if they do it, they're going to charge some sort of a fee, which would make it useless for the purchaser to use this procedure. The only place where it might come into play is there are some specialty projectiles and ammunitions, for example, in long-range competition, for example, requires a special bullet that most dealers don't stock, and they're typically ordered over the internet or through mail order, but that's a very small percentage of the total. Relative to transmitting ammunition records to local law enforcement, we're very much opposed to that. Dealers, most ammunition dealers in California are small business people. They just don't have the resources to do this, particularly on a daily basis. Under existing law, if a law enforcement agency wants to inspect their records, they can come in. This bill would allow them to copy those records. Dealers don't have a problem with them doing that, but they just don't have the resources, and from their point of view, it's an anti-business provision of the bill. Relative to providing ammunition to information to third parties, dealers wouldn't do that anyway, so it's a moot point for us. Relative to safe destruction of ammunition records, dealers would do that anyway, so that's a moot point. Relative to law enforcement officials inspecting records, they already do that. That's a moot point for us. Should ammunition vendors be required to provide written notice to local law enforcement and to buy local licenses? We're very much opposed to that. Under the Senator's prior legislation, if it is revised to become constitutional and therefore operative again, law enforcement's going to know that this person is selling ammunition, so there's no need to really notify them. As far as the local license is concerned, these people already have business licenses, and in the case of a firearms retailer, they already have a federal firearms license and all state and local requirements as well. So this licensing provision here would be a redundancy under existing law, and notifying local law enforcement really wouldn't provide a benefit relative to what they already have to do. So we're opposed to this bill and appreciate your indulgence.
Thank you.
Yeah, Carol Strickman, staff attorney with Legal Services for Prisoners with Children, and I just want to speak to the gang injunction piece of this proposed legislation. I've had a front row seat at the Oakland gang injunction proceedings, and is this to the amended gang injunction piece? Because if it isn't, don't go into everything because it's been amended. Okay, I was under the impression that it's currently written. Is it ordering that a judge would issue who's issuing injunction would have to have an order that anyone affected couldn't possess a firearm? Is that not the case?
No,
I'm sorry then. Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, Kathy Lynch representing the National Shooting Sports Foundation in opposition.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Ed Worley with the National Rifle Association. I won't go through the other parts of the bill that are problematic, but one thing you'll find very fascinating is his bill would require that dealers would have to transmit the sales records to local law enforcement agencies. Okay? Currently under state law, local law enforcement agencies are not allowed to collate a list of firearms owners. But under the provisions of his law, local law enforcement agencies will be allowed to keep these records in perpetuity. So in essence, what you're doing is state statute already says you can't keep records of firearms owners by local law enforcement. His bill says you can. His bill says there's no requirement in his bill also that protects the privacy of firearms of ammunition purchasers. There's no requirement in the bill for the lawful destruction by law enforcement agencies of the data they have collected. The other provision in the bill which is problematic is, as pointed out, is that what you have is firearms dealers who have federal firearms licenses to do business anywhere within the jurisdiction of the state of California. The problem is if these dealers go to the various gun show events and vendor shows and things like that, they would have to get a business license for every jurisdiction they go to. There's no requirement in the bill that mandates a local jurisdiction has to act within a timely basis. There's no mandate in the bill that requires that you would have a state and federal license. You've been fingerprinted and background checked by ATF. But then again, if they don't respond to you when you ask for a vendor's license, for instance, in a Cal Palace or other places, or even here at Cal Expo, that they could just basically ban a federal licensee from selling ammunition through their federal license at a show, just because they don't respond to it if they put the licensing requirement on there. So there's very large problems with the bill. It's problematic as far as the processing of things go. It sounds good on the outside, but when you try to peel away the layers, what you find is now we have all this contradiction. And one of the most troubling aspects of the bill to us is that, again, it allows local agencies to keep in perpetuity records of persons who've bought ammunition. Why do they need those records for 20 years? And the other thing is that we've seen records, and the Department of Corrections has found that they were dumping records into the dumpsters. There's no provision in this bill that would require them to destroy the records or even verify that they've destroyed the records. So, and for all those reasons and other listed by other opponents, we oppose the bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would ask speakers to add new information, but not necessarily have to repeat everything.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Tom Pedersen with the California Rifle and Pistol Association. As far as new information, just like to reiterate the problems associated with selling ammunition for vendors as far as being able to obtain a license. Because of the fact that they have no stationary location like they would at a local business that they have, and they're probably already licensed anyway by the federal government, the states, as a firearms dealer, it's very problematic to be able to get a vendor's license in that regard. It would create a lot of problems. It also allows a lot of discretions for local entities to just deny such licenses. So for that and for many of the reasons that were already stated, we oppose the bill and appreciate a no vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Ricketts, co-founder of Tea Party United and a concerned citizen. I've owned firearms for more than 50 years. In that time, I have never pointed a firearm, loaded or unloaded, at another human being. I don't see why a law-abiding citizen such as myself needs to face additional burdens just because he wishes to own a firearm for self-protection. Thank you.
Thank you.
Elenia Helmantoller with Responsible Citizens of California, NorCal Open Carry, and Contra Costa Open Carry. I want to tell you a story about some of these items of these books that are being kept in places that are currently registering these. I was at the Sports Authority in the city of Concord where they have these books. I could tell you a page fell out of the book on the way. The employees that are handling the books, there's no accountability for them. There are Walmarts that sell ammunition. Does this mean that Walmart employees are well screened, that have this access to this type of information, our IDs, our information? I recognized my neighbors' names on those books. Those books are accessible. They are not kept in secure locations like they're supposed to be, and they're viewable by everybody else. Now, I know who has what caliber of what kind of handguns. If I were to go and target those residents for theft of a firearm, I think this will increase the access of firearms to criminals and increase the amount of crime that could happen because of the security of these books and the privacy information. We have the rights to privacy in California. It's one of our primary and constitutional rights in our state constitution. Those rights have to be protected by everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator De Leon, I don't know if there are questions or comments from the committee, or you'd like to respond first to some of the comments.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think there are probably going to be questions from the committee as well, but maybe he can answer some of them before we get going.
Okay. The questions are?
Particularly, if I could, Madam Chair, on the issue of privacy, I mean, that seems like it, is a real issue, and we all in this legislature are very protective of privacy rights and rules and regulations, and I'm just stunned by some of the allegations by the witnesses of how lax the protection and ultimate destruction of these very private records and the lack of any control over them. Could you address that?
The issue that was highlighted at the Sports Authority in Concord, I have no idea what took place there. Or I will say this, is that we have a provision in the measure on page I'll find it for you right now, Senator Harmon, page 8, section 4, 30355, which deals with the privacy protection of consumers of handgun ammunition in the state of California. In short, I share the same concerns that we must protect.
Well, let me just direct
allow
your
me to
attention
finish.
to the
Allow me to
first-
finish,
Wait
and
a
then
minute.
allow me to finish.
No colloquy, please.
I want to protect the consumer's privacy as well. Therefore, that's why I have in language too that all language and personal data from consumers of handgun ammunition shall not be sold or offered to a third party other than local law enforcement or county sheriffs. Also, too, after a period of 5 years, it specifically states too that any personal data must be shredded and destroyed. I, like you, Senator Harmon, am concerned about the privacy protections, and that's why we have that section there too. As to what happened at Sports Chalet or Sports Authority, I can't comment because I wasn't there to witness it.
Senator Calderon?
I have more, but go ahead, please.
Oh, okay, we'll come back. I would just note that my looking at this bill was that it was intended to and did in several significant ways tighten the privacy requirement.
That is correct, Madam Chair.
Okay.
This is
So whether it goes far enough or if we want to suggest.
Madam Chair, I just want to underscore one important point. This is a technical cleanup measure. I want to be very careful, but I will follow your lead, Madam Chair, that we don't sort of rehash the whole debate of AB 962, which was already chaptered into law by then Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Thank you.
Thank you. A couple of comments and a question. I'm a little disturbed by the NRA testimony indicating that there were no protections for privacy and that the law enforcement agencies can keep this information in perpetuity. That's not true based on your legislation. They can only hold on to that personal information for 5 years, then it must be destroyed.
That is correct.
Does it say shredded or just says destroyed?
We use the word destroyed.
Destroyed.
We can
and
have
that
some
doesn't mean
clarity.
throwing that in a dumpster?
We wanted to avoid information and personal data being tossed out into a dumpster where scavengers or whoever can go in there and collect that information. We've found, not with gun dealers per se, so I want to be very respectful of the gun vendors, but we found other types of vendors who regularly sell third-party information to other individuals, and or when they have the data, they simply want to destroy it. Their way of destroying it is just tossing it into the trash can where folks can actually go in and collect personal information. Therefore, that information must be destroyed.
So what do they do about the electronic data, the data that they enter on their records?
It is simply deleted.
It's just deleted. It's
purged.
purged.
Deleted, yes.
Okay. The other thing that concerns me is the small business compliance with the measure. And first of all, what kinds of penalties are there for an oversight or an inability in implementing this program initially for small businesses that may not either know or are learning or for some reason can't comply? Senator
Calderon, with regards to the compliance of the measure itself, on section 6 on page 9, what we do is we want to make sure that vendors, large and small or mid-size, through a letter to the chief of police and their local law enforcement, or if it's in an unincorporated area of the county in the state of California, that they notify their sheriffs that in fact they are a vendor of handgun ammunition. The reason why that section is there, Senator Calderon, is that the vast majority of police chiefs as well as county sheriffs in the state of California do not know who sells handgun ammunition in the state of California. In fact, I would venture to say that, Senator Calderon, if you or a staff member in your office called the Department of Justice and asked the Department of Justice, whether it's the Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General, who sells handgun ammunition, and in fact who purchases handgun ammunition in the state of California, they couldn't give you an answer because it doesn't exist. Because we don't have a framework, a registry that exists in the state of California as to who sells it, who purchases it. That's why it's a friendly reminder. If I am Ted's Gun and Bait Tackle Shop in Ukiah or in Montebello or in East Los Angeles unincorporated, that as a vendor I have to notify our local police chief or the county sheriff that I'm just on the record selling handgun ammunition. It's a very simple letter that takes about a couple minutes. That's done either prospectively as a new business or when the vendor's business license is up for renewal.
So in which case, if they do that, then the law enforcement agency knows that information is available at the site, at the retailer's store. And in that case, would the law enforcement agency have access to that information? In other words, how is it transmitted?
That is correct. You're accurate in terms of the local police chief or the county sheriff is notified by the vendor that they plan on selling, their intent is to sell handgun ammunition, or they have been selling handgun ammunition. Therefore, the local law enforcement knows that this business, in fact, sells handgun ammunition. Now, when that information with regards to the consumer is transmitted to local law enforcement, it's either done on a manual basis, i.e., an example is the city of Los Angeles as well as the city of Sacramento, done manually, or it can be transmitted electronically.
Would you consider language that would just allow the law enforcement agencies access to those records at the vendors at the store?
We have that language is there in Measure AB 962. What this measure does differently,
which they said was unconstitutional.
It keeps we had a judge in the city of Fresno, in the county of Fresno, who viewed it as constitutionally vague. That is under appeal by the Attorney General, Ms. Kamala Harris. I'm very confident just in a few months that will be overturned very quickly.
And my last question is, what kind of information actually are you asking the retailers to retain and provide for?
The information that's supplied via a California identification card or a California license card, as well as your thumbprint.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Harmon.
I think.
Or Senator Anderson?
I'll defer. Go ahead. Well, I want to read a comment out of our analysis provided by the California Association of Firearms Retailers, one of the gentlemen that have testified this morning.
Is that a letter?
It says here, quote, "It would be operationally impossible for ammunition vendors to comply with this bill, SB 427. The majority of firearms retailers are small businesses, and the new cost to comply with SB 427, if it were possible, would be a major expense, a time-consuming burden." I mean, they're saying operationally they just can't comply with this, and that's going to put these small businesses, frankly, out of business. And I don't think that's the way we want to be going in California, and particularly when you put this burden on them to give the local law enforcement the notification. I'm kind of supportive of what I think Senator Calderon was inquiring about. It and I think the witness himself testified, we don't mind if they want to come to our store and copy those records in our store. It's the burden that you're putting on them to transfer that information, and either electronically or in hard copy, to different law enforcement agencies. So I'm very concerned about that part of the bill. I'm very concerned about the privacy issues. We heard a witness testify that when she was at the retail sales store that, here's a copy of the records of her neighbor laying on the floor. She picked it up and identified that individual as to what kind of ammunition she had purchased. That's a clear violation of that customer's privacy rights, and so I'm very, very disturbed about the privacy rights. It seems like there's not nearly enough protection in this bill, Senator De Leon, to meet constitutional privacy requirements. So I simply can't support this bill today. I would encourage you to consider taking some amendments in the areas where concern has been expressed by committee members. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Harmon. I appreciate your comments. I'm not a constitutional lawyer, so therefore giving a legal opinion would be a little difficult for me on this specific issue with regards to privacy on this issue. I share your same concerns as well, too. I want to be very careful that we don't legislate or amend through anecdotal evidence also, too. This is a one-time requirement with regards to the furnishing of the information. It is, I would say, less onerous than paying a gas bill. To me, it's just that simple. And perhaps, and I do respect you very much, Mr. Harmon, but I think philosophically that's where we fundamentally have our differences.
One just short follow-up question. On page 8 at line, starting at 9, that first sentence, do you have that in front of you? Page 8, line 9. It says, the records required by this article shall be maintained on the premises of the vendor for a period of not less than 5 years. It doesn't seem to have any guidelines of how those records will be stored, the fact that they will be kept confidential, in what format, electronic, hard copy. One of the witnesses said it was in a 3-ring binder that fell out on the floor. I mean, there needs to be some really beefed up language to put in there to what's the Walmart store supposed to do. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Harmon.
Thank you. Senator Calderon.
Just one real quick comment. I will be supporting the bill today, but I think it needs a lot of work, Senator, and the areas that I'm concerned with, and Senator Harmon, mostly in protecting our identities and protecting people's civil liberties. I'll reserve my right on the floor not to support this bill, but I will ask you if you can continue working with everyone concerned. I will be voting for it today.
Thank you, Senator Calderon. I appreciate it. And Madam Chair, if I may just add one comment on the issue that Mr. Harmon highlighted.
Certainly.
I'd be more than happy, Senator Harmon, to speak with you as well as work with your staff and obviously Mr. Calderon if specificity is called for more. So I try to be somewhat as flexible because I knew there was opposition altogether in the beginning of keeping records. But now it's quite interesting now that those who oppose the measure want very hardcore specificity, 3x5 cue cards, or I don't know if a CD disc or whatever it is specifically. So we've gone from vagueness and ambiguity, and generalities to now very hardcore pinpoint, find a needle in the haystack specificity. But I'm respectful of the concerns. I'll be more than happy to work with you.
I have a question.
Senator Anderson.
Senator, there is an area in the bill that addresses the private vendor. And then there is no limit for law enforcement. They can keep these records in perpetuity. There's no cap on it. What I'm concerned about is looking down the road, they now, unless there's something formed there to limit how long they have to keep those records, they may feel obligated to keep them in perpetuity, having to store them, having to be responsible for them.
The law enforcement or the vendor?
Law enforcement.
Law enforcement. Okay.
Because nowhere in there does it say that there's a statute of limitations of where they can release that. I'm worried that they're going to feel like they have to have those records because otherwise they might be open to future lawsuits for not having the records in that somehow some clever attorney is going to say it's their fault that some crime occurred because they didn't have the records readily accessible. I don't think that we should be opening up our law enforcement to additional lawsuits that don't make sense. So I think that the bill would be better served to put law enforcement under the same types of regulations that you're putting on those businesses.
Senator Anderson, if I were to make that change, would you support this measure?
No, because I got more issues. Okay. I wasn't done. In AB 109, we provided for the early release of convicted gang members in possession of a firearm. I found, I own a firearm. I buy ammo. I'm not robbing banks. I'm not in a gang. The onus is always on me to comply with stuff, and I'm not the problem. It seems to me that if we were really concerned about this, we wouldn't have allowed that provision in AB 109. Now, I brought that concern up on the Senate floor on that bill because I'm actually focused in on the criminals who are violating the law. I won't be able to support the bill, but I still think that it should be I'd like to help you make it a better bill, but I can't get there because I think that the focus should be on the criminals, not the people who are abiding by the law. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? I would like to urge you, Senator De Leon, I will definitely be supporting the bill today, that you look, as the bill proceeds to appropriations, about ways of defining or tightening the security within stores.
Of the personal data.
Right, of the personal data, simply based on the admittedly one piece of anecdotal evidence that we have. But certainly guidelines and specificity would make, I think, life easier for both large and small retailers. I want to say that I particularly appreciate the section in the bill that requires vendors to give notice to the local police chief and require business licenses. I found when I was in local government that we had some very marginal people, 32 of them in a small city, in different places, operating out of their homes, internet, and mail-order gun and ammunition sales without business licenses and in a very unregulated way. And I think it's important that we understand who is selling these things and that law enforcement has access to that. And I appreciate that part of the bill very, very much. I would also note that it says that copies of the ammunition sales records will be transmitted to the local sheriff or chief of police if required by local law. So it does leave a great deal of discretion to local law. I think that this is a good bill, and thank you for following up on your own legislation to tighten it in various ways. And if there is a motion of due pass to appropriations, I think you've heard suggestions from members of the committee about ways. So it's moved as amended already, moved as amended to appropriations.
Madam Chair, if I may.
And you may.
I thank you very much for your words. I will definitely follow through with Senator Calderon and Senator Harman with regards to what you underscored, the personal data collection, as well as is a little more specificity, if you will. And I will work with Senator Harman and Senator Calderon. Just a couple points I wanted to make very quickly. I know we have a motion. Is that again, this is a technical cleanup measure. It doesn't violate the Second Amendment of the Constitution because it's not germane to the Second Amendment of the Constitution. We're dealing with handgun ammunition. This measure does not provide any limits or caps, if you will, on the amount of handgun ammunition that can be purchased. In fact, any law-abiding citizen, whether you live in a rural, suburban, or urban area, is allowed to purchase all the handgun ammunition that they wish to purchase. Now, also, too, we do allow the sale of handgun ammunition via the internet, but we provide the clarification that it be a face-to-face transaction at the end of the day, similar to what we do with handguns. Folks can purchase handguns and other types of firearms via the internet, but when they have to physically pick up the handgun, obviously they've gone through the background check when they do so through the gun dealer. So with that, thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to present this measure. I ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. The motion do pass as amended to appropriation. Secretary, please open the roll.
Hancock.
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Anderson. Calderon.
Aye.
Calderon, aye. Harmon.
No.
Harmon, no. Lou.
Aye.
Lou, aye. Price.
Aye.
Price, aye. Steinberg.
Bill is on call. Hold the roll open. And you have another,
I do.
yet another bill, Senator De Leon. This is item 13, SB 798.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Oh, please continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I was waiting for you.
Madam Chair, as well as members, I believe that this measure will be brief in comparison to the last one. SB 798 was introduced at the request of Los Angeles Police Chief Charlie Beck. This bill seeks to protect Californians, especially law enforcement officers, from the dangers caused by fake firearms. Every day, the men and women who serve as law enforcement officers must make split-second, nanosecond decisions to determine if it is appropriate to use deadly force to protect our communities. This quick and life-changing decision is made even more difficult given that these fake guns look exactly like real guns. Accidental shootings, especially the shootings of minors and young adults by law enforcement officers and others, is tragic. SB 798 addresses this public safety problem by requiring BB guns to adhere to the same laws and regulations set forth for imitation firearms. As a result, BB guns would be required to be brightly colored to avoid mistaking them for real firearms, which will help to protect the lives of our law enforcement officers who work tirelessly to keep our communities safe. Here with me in support of this measure is Alejandro Esparza, representing Los Angeles Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa. We have also LAPD Deputy Chief and the Chief of all the detectives of the Los Angeles Police Department, Mr. David Doan, and we have with us also LAPD Detective and Firearms Expert, Mr. Richard Tompkins, for any technical aspects of this measure. And with us representing the Los Angeles County of Sheriffs, Sergeant Bill Mulder, with us today. Madam Chair, as well as members, I reciprocally ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. Speakers in support.
Thank you, Senator, Madam Chair, members. Alex Esparza from the Mayor Villaraigosa's office here in support. This is a common sense public safety issue that the mayor is very supportive of. It's a high priority for himself, and I do, for the record, want to note that the City Council is also in the process of passing a support resolution, and that's forthcoming. But I'll defer my time to colleagues from LAPD.
Yes, thank you. Because we are under some time constraints, so if people will be concise and make their points, I would appreciate it.
Good morning, David Doan, Deputy Chief, Los Angeles Police Department. In light of that, then we'll shorten up the presentation. But clearly, Chief Beck strongly supports this bill. We have seen significant tragedies across the United States, and specifically in the city of Los Angeles, where people with these types of weapons have presented themselves in a situation that has resulted in being shot. In particular, on December 16th of last year, in the early evening hours after dark, two Los Angeles police officers in a residential community in the city of Los Angeles came across three young men who were in the street. As the police car came down the street, two of them went to one side of the street and hid behind vehicles, and another went to the opposite side of the street and hid behind a van. Officers approached an area where we've had problems with cars being broken into, an area where gangs have had rivalry issues in the past. The officers alighted from their vehicle and confronted the suspects. The two young men on one side of the street stood up with their hands above their heads. The other individual looked from between the van and then ducked down behind it. As the officer came around to confront the suspect, who turned out to be about 5'7", 200 pounds, wearing dark clothing, he came away from the vehicle, and as he turned towards the officer, he pulled a weapon very similar to this out of his waistband. This is a weapon that, as it was coming out of the waistband, the officer believed was a firearm, and he fired 2 rounds at the young man and hit him. Weapon turned out to be a replica firearm, like the one I'm holding in my hand right now. That young man turned out to be 13 years old and is now paralyzed from the chest down because he panicked while playing with this type of weapon in the street after dark, and when confronted by law enforcement, instead of putting it on the ground or his hands up, he chose to take it out and try to discard it in the presence of an officer who had a difficult time distinguishing it between that and this, which is a 9mm Beretta, for which this weapon or this toy is designed to look like.
Excuse me, but I thought current law covered imitation firearms, and we were looking at BB guns. Yeah, come under the existing law, right. So,
if it depending upon the type of ammunition that it fires, it has to have a red tip. But BB guns do not require there to be a tip on them at all. And as you can see by either of these two weapons, these are both BB guns or pellet guns, airsoft weapons. They're very difficult to distinguish from the real thing in a split second where an officer has to do it. So the department is very supportive of the concept that for concealable firearms or concealable imitation weapons such as these, that they need to be distinguishably marked. Let's get out the other one. In some fashion.
Thank you.
Okay? Okay. That's good. She's pushing for time.
Yeah. Are there...
Good morning, Chair and members. I'm Bill Mulder with Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, appearing on behalf of Sheriff Lee Baca, and we're in full support of this bill. It's a very good bill, and we urge your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there others in support? Are there speakers in opposition to the bill? Please come forward.
My name's Eleni Helmand-Toller again. I'm just going to speak on behalf of myself. One of our open carry advocates, who is an advisor, he used to be an advisor on weapons of mass destruction for the FBI down in the Los Angeles area, met with a Long Beach police officer. Officers accidentally shooting people for various items is a serious concern, and this has to do with training of law enforcement officers. Anything in the hand of an individual is a risk. We saw an individual with a garden hose, which was actively squirting water, that was shot by police. We've seen people with sandwiches in their hands. We've seen people with cell phones. We've seen people with all sorts of objects in their hands accidentally being shot. This goes to say, you know, all these cuts to law enforcement officers, and we need to protect our budget for our law enforcement trainings, because these trainings are lacking in all of these departments, which are creating a hazard to the public. What I just saw over here is also a hazard. I saw this gentleman pick up a gun, imitation or not. He cocked it, and it's pointed directly at this man. Anybody that knows how to handle a firearm would not do that. We need people to be trained, whether they are here. Anybody who has access to any type of weapons, firearms, including airsoft, should be trained in some manner of safe and lawful use of them. I'm opposed to this bill.
Thank you. I just would like people to address the issue of including BB guns in existing law, please. Thank you.
Okay.
I understand guns are an emotional topic, but this is a rather narrow bill.
Yes. Madam Chair, members of the committee, Gerald Upholder representing the California Association of Firearms Retailers. One thing I've noticed about this issue and looking at the newspaper accounts and the literature that's been provided and so on, there's a great deal of confusion about BB devices themselves. We have BB guns and pellet guns, which are included in BB devices, which are in fact real guns. They're not firearms. They're air guns. Then we have the airsoft, which is probably what the officer had, which is kind of has 1 foot in the air gun camp and 1 foot in the toy camp. They shoot a large plastic projectile for the most part, about 1/4 inch in diameter, relatively low velocities. And those guns could not really hurt somebody unless they were extremely close and you hit them in the eye or something like that. People use them for games, you know, the war games, they run around and shoot each other and so on. But BB guns and pellet guns are real guns, and they can seriously injure somebody, and with some of the pellet guns, they can even kill somebody if they hit them in the right place. So to color a BB gun or a pellet gun as if it was a toy would actually place law enforcement officers in more danger, because they would assume this is a toy, but what it is in reality is something that could seriously injure or perhaps even kill them if hit in the right spot. So to that extent, this bill would create a very dangerous situation for the public and law enforcement, because they would believe that a real gun is in fact a toy. On the airsoft, on the other hand, those are the ones that are manufactured to look like real guns. They're actually patterned after real guns in every detail. You can't tell the difference in most cases unless you walk right up and pick one up and find, oh, it's plastic and the parts don't move and so on and so forth. This is what the kids are using. This is probably what the kids had after dark that night. And there is a lot of confusion on those, and that's why they were included within the BB devices and controlled. Our group is looking at finding some way to separate out the difference between the airsoft, which is partially more toy, I think, than